Thanks for tuning in to the Prime Bookseller Podcast, the bi-weekly podcast discussing all things Amazon bookselling.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Prime Bookselling Podcast. I'm Eric, and we're going to do a really quick, short, sweet episode here today for you. And what we're talking about today is I just want to give the basic blueprint of how, if a client comes to us and is looking to set up an Amazon account for the specific purpose of bookselling, what do we specifically do? And many of you might be out there thinking, well, God, this is going to be a complex episode, but it really is not. The fundamental pieces that you need to get your Amazon account up and running and selling is not very hard. There's only a couple pieces that we even apply to each store, and we've been running bookstores for 13 years successfully using this exact formula. So what are those steps that we recommend everybody do with their account? Well, the first thing you got to do is get an Amazon selling account if you don't have one. So how do you do that? You go to sellercentral.amazon.com and get signed up for it there. That process is long, rigorous, boring, lots of details, can take up to 10 days to get. Process is constantly changing, so I'm not even going to delve into how you go about getting it, but things I've seen them ask for, I've seen them have people get on Zoom calls to confirm their identity. I've seen them ask for utility bills with your name on it and address on it to confirm your identity. So that, by far, that's the longest step right there, is just getting that account. So if you've gotten that done, the hardest part of setting up your store is already completed. So what do we add on top of just the basic seller account before we start selling books online? There's basically, we talked about one of the critical pieces, and I think that this is something that everybody on their selling account from day one should go in, decide to do, and that's the automated fulfillment removal settings. Go in there. If you haven't listened to that episode, go back to the previous episode, listen to that. It goes into detail on how to configure those, and definitely get those set up on your account immediately. The other thing that we do is we're going to add two pieces of third-party software to each account. One of them is a listing software. One of them is a repricer. I highly, highly recommend everybody from the get-go to have a repricer. You can, if you're just getting started out, you can delay the repricer for a short period of time. But I highly recommend your business is going to have the most success if you have a repricer set up. In the future, I'm going to try to put together some trainings and videos that will cover both the repricer and the listing software we're going to talk about in more detail. But those are down the road as of right now. So what you want to look at doing is, first, most important, get that repricer. I always use a repricer called Aura, A-U-R-A repricer. By no means is this repricer like the end-all be-all only recommendation I have. In fact, I know a lot of people that use BeCool. I think BeCool and Aura are virtually the same thing. I just learned about Aura first, so that's the one I use. But you can also look at BeCool. Aura, I believe BeCool only runs about $40 a month, but Aura is like $77 a month, I believe. So those are kind of getting up in the higher price range. If you're looking to start this on a lower budget, there is one piece of software that I can recommend that I have used in the past. In fact, for probably the first 10 years of my business, I ran my book business on a repricer called Reprice It, which works great. It actually has advantages over Aura in the sense that once you set it up, it just reprices for you without any further interaction from you, which I love. Which Aura, there's constant updates you have to do to it to make sure that it's properly repricing everything, which can be a good thing and a bad thing. So you could look at these two options, but the first thing you need to do is look at one of these options, get it connected to your Amazon account. It's very important. None of these softwares will work unless you have a pro seller account. So when you set up your Amazon seller account, they're going to ask you if you just want a basic account or a pro seller. You want a pro seller account. It does cost you $39.99 a month to get that pro seller account, but nothing that leverages the Amazon API will work without that account, without that pro seller account. So these repricers, you can try to connect them to Amazon. It just won't work because that they're blocking you from that API. So make sure you have that. You add the repricer on top of that, whether you want it to be Reprice It or Aura. I did forget to mention with Reprice It, I do highly recommend that you can start with Reprice It, just if you're looking to start on a lower budget, prove that this system works before jumping to Be Cool or Aura. I do highly recommend at some point in time jumping to those, because those Reprice It uses an old repricing technology and Aura uses a new repricing technology. The newer repricing technology is far superior to what Reprice It uses. So basically what I'm telling you is when the repricer gets more information from Amazon to decide how to set your prices, gets better information, gets the information faster, so it just does a better job of repricing. So while I don't have a problem with Reprice It, I will tell you that you are getting a better product with either Be Cool or Aura. And also, there is a good possibility at some point in time that the technology that Reprice It is running on is just going to go away. Amazon's going to get rid of it. They kind of released the technology that Aura uses to replace the technology that Reprice It uses. So at some point in time, you might just find out that that repricer is going to stop working, or the repricer is going to have to go back and completely rewrite itself to work with the new technology. So you got three phases. So you got your Amazon Seller Central account. You're signed up as a pro merchant on that, or a professional seller, whatever they call it these days, for $39.99 a month. You've hooked up a repricer. You've also gone in and configured your Amazon unfulfillable settings. And then the final step, in this step, I highly recommend, as any seller, if you're legitimately looking at getting into this business for the long haul, I do highly recommend that at some point in time you get a repricer, or a listing software. The listing software we use with all of our clients is Inventory Lab. And as you may hear at the end of all these podcasts, when I preach about our inventory services that Kingsridge Media offers to other sellers, Inventory Lab is a requirement of those services, because if we're going to be prepping the books for you, I want my warehouse staff to be able to use a program they're familiar with and not whatever program you're using. So that I do highly recommend you look at Inventory Lab. Unfortunately, Inventory Lab is one of the most expensive listing softwares out there. But I can tell you, with all the softwares that I've used over the years, the one thing I can say, the reason why I've always stuck with Inventory Lab is because it just works. And not to say that the other ones don't work, but they're just not user-friendly. They're just tricky. Like, you spend a lot of time sitting on the screen looking at, okay, how do I do this now? Like, because there's buttons everywhere. It's just crazy sloppy looking and stuff like that, where Inventory just walks you through. Anybody can do it because it's just super, super simple. Now, with the listing software, again, works like your repricer. It's plugging into that Amazon API. So again, you have to have the professional seller thing. And you just go to inventorylab.com, sign up for an account, and connect it to your Amazon account, and boom, you're ready to go. Now, as a startup thing, if you are, again, trying to cut back on costs just to get this going and, prove to yourself that this is worth investing the money into, you can go without that listing software, because Amazon does provide, through Seller Central, the ability to list and sell items just through their web interface. The only thing I will tell you is that their system that they use, it requires a lot of clicks on your mouse. It requires a lot of steps. It just takes a much longer time to list something than if you use a listing software. So it works if you want to get started, but I highly recommend, as soon as you start scaling, one of the first things you do is add this listing software into it, because it just makes that process so much simpler. You can process so many books through so much faster than you can using just the Amazon interface, that it becomes a worthwhile money investment. And again, if you've heard about the KRM sourcing